going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show, DRFTV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition, and it's going to be a relatively short one. Only going to take a look at one race. There's not going to be any sports at the end of it. Still ironing some kinks out and how we're going to kind of figure all that stuff out. But we're going to take a look at the Grade 2 San Marcos out at Santa Anita, a mile and a quarter on the grass. To me, it's the best race of the weekend. It's the most interesting race of the weekend. I know there's a Derby prep. I know there's an Oaks prep. I know there's a number of stakes races. The San Marcos, to me, is one of the more intriguing races. If you listen live, thank you for doing so. You listen to podcasts like most of you do. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. You're over on YouTube. Click the subscribe button. Give us some sort of a rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever else it may be. Questions, comments, concerns beneath the video player over there. But I think we have more people now listening over on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or Spotify. If you're over there, subscribe, give us a rating, give us a review. Always greatly appreciated. Not going to waste any time. Let's dive right into it. This is Handicapping, the Grade 2 San Marcos using Formulator and replays. So we'll keep things a little bit light here this week. Obviously, a lot of people will be looking at the Sam F. Davis down at Tampa. You can find that stakes preview in the usual spots, video.drf.com or the Racing Forms YouTube channel, and you'll also see it in Out of the Gate and the other races included. This, to me, was arguably the most interesting race of the weekend, though, the Grade 2 San Marcos. These are my favorite races, these long-distance turf races. I think there's more strategy involved. I understand people here in the States, you know, what we're most known for is dirt sprints. And it's just generally that raw power. Whoever's faster than the other is going to get it done. It's a drag race for the most part. I like a little bit more of that, you know, call it what you will, the dance of a turf race where, you know what, there's going to be, sometimes there's pace, sometimes there's not. When there's not, how do the horses coming from the back adapt? How do the riders and the connections sort of play that game? I think there's a little bit more strategy that goes into it. And there's just a part of me that enjoys watching a turf race a hell of a lot more than watching a dirt race, because I think there's just more excitement that happens in a turf race. So long way of saying these are my favorite races that we have. Mile and a quarter on the grass. We know, well documented a number of times, Southern California, bit of a hot mess as far as their turf runners have been concerned over the past handful of years, particularly the long distance ones. But you have had some solid runners. You know, you've had It's in the Post. You've had Ashley Loves Sugar. You've had a number of those types that they've gone on and they've kind of owned a division for a little bit of time. Now those horses, we've seen their better days. And I think it makes this race very, very intriguing. We'll take a look. We'll go through the field using Formulator. We'll take a look at a few replays and dive into just overall my kind of thoughts on the race. As I've said in the past, these two numbers right here beneath the little picture of the racetrack and the configuration, these are the numbers that I'm looking at saying, I need you to have at least run that to think you have a legitimate chance in a race like this, a 95 buyer and a 114 raw time form rating. If neither of those have been eclipsed, then it's going to take something special for me to look at the horse and say, you know what, I think you're a true player, whether it's a first-time starter here in the States, whether there's an equipment change, whether there's a trainer change, X, Y, and Z. But usually these are the two numbers I use as a guideline before I start anything else. So we'll start off down on the inside with the number 1, Unapologetic. Now, you're going to know I've got a number of colors involved, and I'll go through and explain why certain pieces are the color that they are. Unapologetic is a horse that I've always been a little bit of a fan of. I think he's very talented. I have to be honest, I think the Connections got away with one right here where they dipped him in for 50,000, and I understand why. I mean, from a condition standpoint, he's basically out of them unless he's in for the tag. But more importantly, I do believe that this is a horse that is very clearly better going longer, and his game goes to an entirely different level. You can see in these green races I have highlighted, these are all of his turf races at a mile and a quarter or longer. And you'll see here, okay, an issue, he was eased. I'm not going to hold this race against him. Comes back at this mile and 3/8, and I've said this a number of times whenever Unapologetic is running a race that we've covered. He comes out here, he runs quite well, no match for Chicago style, but a second place finish, comes back at a mile and 3/8, gets the job done. Mile and a half, basically what? Almost a year later or 10 months later, he comes back, gets the job done here. Mile and a quarter gets the job done. The Del Mar handicap, I gave him a look in here. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Had a little bit of a trip, but at the end of the day, really never threatened. So this is really his only dud as far as his long distance turf races are concerned, with the exception of the race where he was pulled up and eased. Then he comes back. They run him in this $50,000 claimer. This was at 1.125 miles. And again, a little bit sharp for this horse. I think he does his best going longer. And I maintain, I think the connections may have gotten away with one because I think he's a nice horse. He comes back here in this N2X race at Del Mar, 1.375 miles. I'm not going to argue with anyone that says perhaps Del Mar is a little bit more to his liking, but this was a career best effort from him. Now, the concern is you take a look and see, I have written here, not great as far as the field is concerned. The runner-up earned an 86 in his next start, the third-place finisher an 86, but the fourth-place finisher did come back to earn a 93. We're going to take a look at the replay right now, and this is what you're going to want to keep an eye on. Look for the blue silks right here with these yellow chevrons. You're gonna see this horse start making up some ground, and again, to me, this is just all around an impressive performance from this horse. Splitting horses right now. He's got the white blinkers on. They're eventually going to angle out, and he's going to just continue on and blow the doors off this field. But right now, you see everybody else is pretty much under a bit of a drive. This is very confident handling from Giovanni Franco. He's going to ease him out into that path, about 4 paths off the rail. Split, find that seam, and he goes on with it very, very nicely and very impressively. It's worth noting Timeform US had the internal fractions of this race color-coded red, so perhaps he had some things go his way, but I love the way that he finishes here. And again, this to me just goes back to letting a horse do what he wants. He clearly is better going longer on turf. There's really no way to argue that based on what you see here in the PPs. I think Unapologetic is an interesting runner. I think he may be slightly just a notch below some of the best in here, but I think he's got a puncher's chance. I picked him fourth in this race. Excuse me, third. I picked him third in here. The number 2 is Rosso, one of 2 in here for Bob Baffert. Now, Bob Baffert, first things first, whenever I see Baffert with a turf horse in a graded stakes race, red flag, ears go up, because this is just not what Baffert does, plain and simple. It's not a knock, but hey, look, everyone has their strengths. On grass, generally, not his deal. 3-year-olds trying to get through the Kentucky Derby and win a Triple Crown, that's his strength. You take a look. Over the past 5 years, first-time turf runners in graded stakes races, it's a very, very small sample size. 0 for 4, and only one of them have hit the board. I can understand anyone that says that is not conclusive evidence, but my bigger point there is over the course of 5 years, he's only done this 4 times. There's a reason he's only done it 4 times, because this is not necessarily what his strength is. Now you can see in this little closer look right here, there's not a ton of pedigree as far as the grass is concerned. Roman Ruler, about 9.5% with the first-time turf runners. I think you're going to see a little bit of speed from this horse, but at the end of the day, I don't know that he's good enough to run with these, and I have no idea if he's going to handle the turf. He's a complete pass for me. I want no part of him in here. Number 3 is Chicago Style. Now, Chicago Style is, I'm going to say, the horse to beat in here. I would imagine he ends up going off the favorite in this spot. His most recent run in the San Gabriel, we'll take a look at that momentarily. There are a number of horses exiting that race, along with Flamboyant and one other runner who is slipping my mind, but we'll see them run here momentarily. My big knock with him heading into the San Gabriel was this right here, 1.125 miles. This doesn't seem like it's his distance. He is much better suited going longer. Another horse that once they stretched him out, he took his game to the next level. In the grand scheme of things, he actually ran quite well here. The winner next shares came back and earned an 86, but I don't know if you can see my chicken scratch right here. I've written trouble next to that 86 because he ran in the Pegasus turf, and he just didn't have the cleanest trip, so I don't want to hold that number against him. We know next shares on his best day what he's capable of. 7th place finisher was a next out winner with a 92. I believe that was Arms Runner. And here I have highlighted in my trip note at the very end. The race is too short, he's got a big kick, and he needs longer. We're going to go to the tape now, and you're going to see this is a horse that does his running from the back. Here he is in the Glen Hill Silks. You're going to have Flamboyant in this race as well, and one other horse. Again, he's just slipping my mind. I can't remember off the top of my head. We'll see as we go on. You're going to see right now Chicago Style is going to come with his big bid. He's going to be spun about 5-6 paths off the rail, turning for home. He's going to angle out behind. He's following next shares right now, which is probably the right place to be. The problem is he is just going to have his engine cooking when it's all said and done, is Chicago Style, and he's just going to run out of ground. There's not enough room for him to really continue on. He's starting to feel it, starting to hit his best stride, and he's just going to run out of space. This to me is just a hallmark of a horse that at the end of the day, he didn't have enough ground to really hit his best stride. You're going to get that on Saturday afternoon. You have to view him as a major player. This 0 for 3 at Santa Anita on the grass, that doesn't really concern me. We know what he's capable of on his best day. The number 4 horse is Epical. Now, this horse I'm fascinated by. He's very, very intriguing to me. And you're going to see I got a ton of colors in there. I'm going to explain and walk you through each one of those. You're going to see these two right here. The two things I've circled, the non-winners of one other than, the non-winners of two other than. Those two races. So clearly he's just gone through his conditions in each of these past two. Now it's time to throw him into the deep end, find out if he can handle the class hike. The interesting thing for me about this horse is it's a stark contrast in running style. And I've talked about some of these other horses and how ultimately different lengths and distances that, some of them like going longer, some of them like going shorter. Well, you can also bring up situations like that with horses and how they run. Some of them like being forwardly placed, some of them like coming from off of the pace. Epical is a horse that very clearly enjoys being up on the front or close to it. His career debut here at a mile on grass, he's forwardly placed, he gets the job done. He then proceeds to go on a, 6-race losing streak? 6 races. And you're going to note that if you look between all these blue boxes that I've put around, he is coming from much farther off of it. Why? I don't know, but it is what it is. Then all of a sudden, and it also helps that they stretched him out in distance, so perhaps he's not going that much faster than he was in these races going shorter, where he just naturally was going to come from a little bit farther back. They stretch him out in distance. He's up there on the engine. And you have 2 blowout victories. I'm not going to show you this mile in an 8th race, but it's worth noting the 3rd place finisher came back, earned an 86, 4th place in 87. He was very, very impressive in this race. I thought it was a bang-up effort from him. I want to show you this race, the non-winners of one other than at Del Mar, where they stretched him out to a mile and 3/8. And to me, I tweeted about it on Thursday. If you haven't seen it, I've ended my hiatus on Twitter. I've come back. I probably won't tweet as much as I was, but I'm still going to throw some stuff out there. This is how you ride a speed horse on grass. Tyler Bays rode this horse beautifully. Now we're going to pick it up on the backside. He's already out here on the front end. But watch the little move that Tyler makes shortly here. He's going to start squeezing on him right about now. You see that little move that he just kind of shook hands briefly? Gave him a little bit of leeway. We're going to spin it back as they come to the first turn. Well, this is the second turn, technically. You're going to watch Tyler. Just watch this left arm of his. Wait for it, 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 wait for it. Right there. Just gave him a little bit of something there. Hits him with the left there, or the right, gives him a little bit of rein, and he opens up. He quickly puts 2 lengths, 3 lengths on this field. The big piece there is now you have taken everyone else out of their game. When this thing was going to be a bit of an accordion where you slow it down, and okay, I like the idea that you're saving some energy for the end, but you're going to try to kick with everyone else, and everyone else's game is kicking at the end. Meanwhile, you're up here, you've got a good turn of foot yourself, but you've put this much ground on the rest of the field, they're going to have to close sub 22 seconds to have any chance of running you down unless you come to a complete stop, which this horse very clearly is not going to. This is a really talented horse and a beautiful ride. This is how I wish every rider would ride a speed horse on grass. And again, in the tweet, I said it. It helps when you've got a really talented animal beneath you. But still, this is a beautiful ride from Tyler Bays. And I have to be honest with you, this horse to me is the X factor of the entire race, because I don't know how he's going to handle other speed in this race where he's not necessarily going to be up there dictating things. I can't imagine it. You've got horses like India Mantuana, the filly. She's going to show some big speed. You have Dabster, who we'll get to in a little bit, trying turf for the first time. He's speed. I'm going to be very, very interested to see how Epical ends up playing this thing and how he ends up stacking up. I picked him 4th in here, but I think he can very easily win this race. He's paired up by her tops, which for me is something I always look for. I'm fascinated by this horse because he is one that I could potentially see. He's a newly turned 4-year-old. He's one I could see ultimately owning this division. You're going to note here he's a gelding. They gelded him over the summer of 2018. He is just very, very interesting to me in this spot. The number 5 horse is Platinum Warrior, 1 of 2 for John Sadler. I understand this number looks pretty solid. This was the other horse exiting the San Gabriel. There's a reason I couldn't remember him. First time blinkers that day. When it's all said and done, I don't know that he's that good. I don't know that he's good enough to run with these. He should appreciate the distance, but I don't like him in this spot. The 6 is Seho. Now this is the other Sadler runner, and unfortunately, there used to be a French website where I could get some good replays, but now Longchamp's replays don't all populate there, and it's become a little bit of an issue. So unfortunately, I don't have tape for you here. And as far as running style is concerned, I don't have a giant sort of feel for it. You can just go by these short little comments. Most of the time, if you go over to Timeform US, you can click and get the expanded pieces. Unfortunately, for the French ones, we don't have them for some reason. So you're left doing a little bit of guesswork here. I'm going to assume he's a European horse making his first start off of a lengthy layoff. I'm going to assume he's going to be a little bit tardy out of the gate. I would imagine he is mid-pack toward rear, but that's just an educated guess here. More importantly, there are a few things to note here. 6 races, 2 victories, each of them his last 2 starts in France. Both of them came over firm turf. Presumably, that's why they brought him here. You'll note that he is a private purchase for Rosso Racing. The thing that you may want to just keep an eye on is there is a chance of rain Friday night into Saturday morning in Southern California. I don't believe it's enough that would threaten the race as far as being on the turf or not, but I do think it could potentially mean you have a little bit of cut in the ground, a little bit of give. First time Lasix for Sadler. I am fascinated that Flavien Prat takes them out. Prat doesn't usually ride for Sadler. This to me is another one that potentially, along with Epical, could this be a sort of leader in Southern California for the next handful of years, potentially taking over for some of these other older horses? Again, the It's in the Posts, the Ashley Love Sugars of the world that, you know what, their best days are behind them. We'll find out. Seho, a little bit of a wild card in here. If you're not sold on anyone else, maybe you want to take a shot with him. Number 7 horse in here is Dabster. Now, Dabster is the other Baffer in here, trying turf for the first time. You're going to note Curlin, about 12.5% with the first-time grass runner, so nothing to sneeze at there. From a figure standpoint, he has earned 3 consecutive 99 Beyer speed figures. He has Timeform US ratings. He has run into some good horses. You see Battle of Midweight twice. You see Gift Box, who I'm not thrilled with, but at the end of the day, he's a nice horse. Rocket Tree, who we're relatively familiar with. He's run into some good runners, don't get me wrong. The turf, again, the Baffert piece, I don't love that, but it's kind of hard to overlook this piece right here. He's a half to a horse called Dr. Mounty. Those of you on the East Coast are paying attention to East Coast running. You know who Dr. Mounty is. He won the Tropical Turf down at Gulfstream just last month, I believe, or 2 months ago. So he's a grade 3 turf route winner on turf route winner in graded stakes races. And he's also a half to a horse called Loom, who was 2 for 9 on turf as well. This horse becomes interesting because you do have a little bit of a tactical ability here. The Los Alamos and a quarter, say we will, sat off of a horse, went on with, you know, he wants to be more forwardly placed, but you also have this race here, this February of 2018 race, where he did come from 4 or 5 lengths off of it, made up some ground and got the job done. A Dabster is interesting, but again, just given the fact that Baffert, this is not a typical move for him, I'm going to pass. Number 8 horse is Beachview. Now, Beachview at face value may be a little bit on the slow side. His 2 best races, the only 2 races that kind of check the box as far as my Beyer speed figure piece is concerned, are 2 half-mile race or a 1.5 mile races at Del Mar and Santa Anita on the main track. Having said that, I think this Hollywood Turf Cup is the race that, if you like this horse like I do, you need to be using this as your barometer, because he was moving very, very sweetly. And unfortunately, there was absolutely nowhere for Bejarano to go. Now, this was off of a little bit of a layoff. I think it's a heck of a lot better than this sort of running line would suggest. We'll show the tape momentarily. But the other reason is I think he's a little bit dirtied up, because then they chose to go on the main track with him here against Gift Box, against Battle of Midway, against Dabster. And this is, to me, a long-distance turf horse. I really like this race at Santa Anita here. I think he's done some good things going longer. And you're going to see, now we're going to go back to the Hollywood Turf Cup. This is Chicago style here in those Glen Hill Silks. He's going to be coming from the back. Also, alongside is Beachview. Now, keep in mind, they really heated this race up going into the far turn, so they each had some good pace to run at. So maybe you want to take them down a little bit for that. This horse, by the way, here, who I haven't even mentioned yet, this is bigger picture, and we know what he's capable of on his best day. He just won the Connolly down at Sam Houston last month. We're going to roll the tape. Keep an eye on the difference in trip between the outside horse here, Chicago style, and this horse down the inside, Beachview, particularly Beachview. I know everyone talks about ground loss. Chicago style is wide. Beachview has nowhere to go right now. He's got 2 fistful of dynamite and absolutely nowhere to go. Meanwhile, Chicago style is full of run right now. He's been let loose. He is in the clear. He's flying. And look at Beachview rally down on the inside. This, to me, is a classic example of a tale of 2 trips. We're going to rewind it slightly. And I'm going to say from right here, if you reverse the trips, if you put Beachview where Chicago style is and Chicago style where Beachview is, I think you get the opposite result. I think Beachview wins this race if he has Chicago style's trip, and vice versa. I think if Chicago style has Beachview's trip, I think he has a troubled third in this spot. So this is all things that you want to keep in mind and consider going forward. At the end of the day, I think Beachview ran a hell of a race right here. I think he's a little bit dirtied up on paper. There's a little bit of tactical speed. Doesn't have to come from as far back as he did that day. I think he's live in this spot. He is ultimately the horse that I'm going to pick in here. The number 9 horse, and I hate to give short shrift to these final 4, but I just don't love any of their chances. Lucky Soul, you got to respect anything that Michael McCarthy sends out right now, but at the end of the day, I just don't think he's quite good enough for this level. The number 10 horse is Flamboyant, a horse that I've always made cases for, but I've maintained this kind of distance is his friend. I think he's best between a mile and an eighth. The longer it goes, the worse I think he gets. The number 11 horse in here is India Mantuana, the 5-year-old mare. Her biggest problem right now, I think, is running style. You see that this was fast fractions all throughout here in this Astra at a mile and a half. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt off the layoff. Perhaps she takes a step forward as she did here in this red carpet 2-back, second off of the bench. The problem is there's other speed that's going to be up there keeping her company. I think these are better horses than what she's been facing with the filly and mare division. I just think she has a lot going against her in here. The number 12 is You Gotta Wanna. You Gotta Wanna for a minute really looked like an intriguing runner for Phil D'Amato. And for one reason or another, after this John Henry Turf Cup, which again, he didn't have the cleanest of trips. You see, I have this written down in here, a bit tight down the stretch, unable to get going. He comes back in this Hollywood Cup, give him the benefit of the doubt. Didn't really work for him. But then he comes back here in this N2X, and I just didn't think there was a lot there. I know he did have some trouble. Granted, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. But the blinkers now coming off, stretching back out in distance. There's a part of me that looks at it and says, you know what? I don't love this whole thing. You take a look at this again, limited sample size, but there's a reason, I think, usually. Past 5 years, blinkers switched off in grade stakes races for D'Amato. 0 for 4. None of them hit the board. He's a pass for me. And on the far outside, Prince of Arabia, who also is a little bit of a wild card in here because this horse, he may not be a winner through and through, but he can fire a shot every once in a while. He can show up and outrun his odds really at any given time. I just, you know what? I want to see one off of this long layoff and see what we get out of him. Of the 2 DP racing horses for Jim Cassidy, I much prefer Epical. So there's the field of 13. To me, it is arguably the most intriguing race of the weekend. This is the Grade 2 San Marcos out at Santa Anita on Saturday afternoon. And as far as my picks are concerned, I kind of told you right away, right when we got through to him. Ultimately, I'm going to go with the 8 in here, Beachview. I just think he's a little bit dirtied up. I think he's better than what his form would suggest recently. Timeform US had that Hollywood Turf Cup rated faster than Beyer did, and he had a miserable trip. I think if you give him the Chicago style trip, he gets the job done. I also like that the Hollywood Turf Cup has come back reasonably solid. Chicago style with that 97, bigger picture. Next out winner with the 98, the 5th place finisher, a 93. So for me in this race, I'm going to go 8, 3, 1, 4 for the Grade 2 San Marcos. That's going to button things up as far as analysis is concerned. We're going to cut back and we'll kind of give you a heads up of what's to come for the rest of the week and the rest of the weekend here on DRFTV. So there you have it. Not the longest and most in-depth as far as quantity and whatever else it may be, but I do think it's an interesting betting race. I think you can go a few different ways in there. Hopefully you get involved over on DRF Bets. Thanks for those of you that listen live. As always, you know the drill. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, Spotify. That's where you find it in podcast version. I'm on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I'll be back with the recap edition at the beginning of next week going over this race as well as the Sam F. Davis, as well as a few other races as well. You can find everything that DRFTV has to offer on the Racing Forms YouTube channel, as well as video.drf.com. Without further ado, the latest edition of Out of the Gate is on deck. I will be back on Monday or Tuesday, depending on how you listen to this thing, with the recap edition. Best of luck, however you play, whatever you play, wherever you play this weekend. This is the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show.